Welcome to a new episode of The Startup Show. Today we are here at the global headquarters of Credit Suisse, and I'm very excited to meet with Andreas Arni, who is the head of entrepreneurs and executives at Credit Suisse Switzerland. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Cedric, for having me today. It's a great pleasure to be on the show.
Welcome back to a new episode of The Startup Show. Today we are here in Zurich, global headquarters of Credit Suisse. It's a big pleasure with the first big bank here on The Startup Show, which is really cool. I'm really excited about this. So Andreas, you know, as usual on The Startup Show, you get 2 minutes to introduce yourself to my audience.
That's really great. Thank you for having me today here. It's a great honor, it's a great pleasure. I work for Credit Suisse. I work with entrepreneurs in Switzerland. And my passion is really to help entrepreneurs to excel, starting at the very early stage, you know, talking about funding, financing, getting the company up and running. And I think that's what we do. And we've been very successful in the most recent years because we have a lot of startup companies here in Switzerland, Swiss people, but also global people coming to Switzerland and really getting started with their business here with us.
But maybe you can give us a little bit of background about yourself, like where you're coming from. I'm sure you have, like I saw on your LinkedIn, you have some career path already behind you. Tell us what brought you to this position here.
I started out, you know, as a student in business.
Yeah.
I was in consulting first, and then I moved to banking and private banking, particularly. I worked a little bit abroad in Latin America. I came back to Switzerland because I discovered my passion for, you know, entrepreneurs. I have a business background. I work with engineers. I work with people in life science, and it's a really exciting job, and I really love to do it every day.
So you said like your passion for startups. Maybe you can pinpoint a little bit like what exactly like that feeling is that you feel towards them, and like what makes it so exciting to work with entrepreneurs.
At the beginning, it's always just an idea. There's sometimes people who have been studying with an idea for years, but they don't know really how to get it on the ground. And then they come to us, and then we help them, you know, to get structure, to get financing, to get advice by other experts. And what we really do, in essence, is we bring together experienced entrepreneurs with startup people who want to found a business, and we bring expertise, we bring financial means, and we also bring some technical know-how, you know, for example, how to have your employees share in the business, how to structure yourself, how to write a business plan, and so on and so forth.
It's really interesting because first time I came across your name, like I was surprised that like Credit Suisse is offering some kind of like a service that what you are offering at the moment, because when you associate a bank, it's usually like you think of money and you deposit your money, but this is a totally kind of like a new way of like a bank bringing itself into like startups. So maybe when you mentioned like, you know, connecting people, financing, how do you do that on a day-to-day basis?
Well, Credit Suisse has in its DNA, so to speak, entrepreneurship, because Credit Suisse was founded by Alfred Escher, who was really one of the great entrepreneurs of Switzerland, you know, to building the railway system and everything. For a number of years now, we have pursued this strategy, which is called Bank for Entrepreneurs, which caters to both like family enterprises in a later stage, which are dealing, for example, with succession issues, but also younger entrepreneurs who are growing. Switzerland as a market, of course, it's way too small for a growth enterprise to really build itself out. So it's really about growing out of a small country into a global franchise, and that requires a lot of financial infrastructure. Yeah. So it's, you know, it's like about payments, it's about, you know, how to get credit, how to invest in expanding your business abroad, how to attract new talent, how to build in the talent in your franchise, how to incentivize this talent. And that's so much of questions which are not maybe the traditional remit of banking, which is giving loans to businesses, but that's where we invest in our franchise because we want to grow. And Switzerland, as you can imagine, from a banking point of view, it's a pretty saturated market. So we try to invest in the segment of young growth entrepreneurs because that's the future of our business as well.
You meet with a lot of entrepreneurs, you see a lot of startups. When you look at the financial points of a startup, what are mainly, let's say, the mistakes entrepreneurs do in the early days of their venture?
Well, the people we work with, they typically come out of university, let's say in Zurich or Basel or Geneva or other places. And the people we work with are not essentially educated in financial matters. So as I said, they are mainly engineers or life science professionals. So we bring some ideas to them, you know, how to, as I said, write a business plan. And some people, they come to us in a very unstructured way, and we have to say, okay, but first of all, you need to determine what kind of investments you need to do, how much money you want to get, how you want to attract investors without diluting yourself too much. And that's one of the big issues that we see. People who require capital in order to build a business, they want to maintain the control over the business, but at the same time, they are depending on outside investors. And how you actually balance this, gaining or attracting investors, but at the same time not losing control over your enterprise, that's one of the key questions that we see, and it's a tricky one.
Again, I want to touch on your expertise with meeting a lot of entrepreneurs. Maybe what are the core strengths when you look at the Swiss entrepreneurs, when they're building? Like before we discussed a little bit briefly about the mistakes they do, but maybe you can also give us a little bit of your insights in terms of the strength that you say those are the core competence of a Swiss entrepreneur.
I would say it has a lot to do with Switzerland as a place to do business. We have a lot of foreign entrepreneurs who come to Switzerland just to build up their business. It's because it's a very stable country, it's because our currency is strong, cost of funding are nowhere as low as in Switzerland, I would say, specifically at the moment where we have negative interest rates from the central bank. And then, of course, it's access to talent. Yeah. I mean, we have a great educational system in Switzerland. There's a continuous flow of fresh talent coming out of the universities, out of the schools, which are available to the entrepreneurs. And if you ask any of the international people who came here to build out a business, they will certainly confirm that.
You see, again, a lot of startups. What do you think are, let's say, some of the main industries or disruptive industries that will come out from Switzerland?
Switzerland is very strong traditionally and historically in life science and medtech. That's because we have a strong life science cluster in the northwestern area of Switzerland, where you have the big pharmaceutical companies like Roche, Novartis. And we have recently had a huge transaction with Actelion selling itself to Johnson & Johnson. So it's a really big pool of talent out there. Yeah. Then the second area, I would say, it's e-commerce, fintech and the likes, which you find mainly in the greater Zurich area, where we also have a big hub of expertise, because we have Google here in Zurich and some other big e-commerce companies. And then you have a few smaller areas which are also very important. For example, in the western part of Switzerland, Geneva and the likes, we see a fresh industry emerging out of the traditional watchmaking industry and its suppliers. And the watchmakers today, they are branching out, they are diversifying more into the area of medical technology.
At what stage do you think, let's say, a startup who is just about to start should approach and come to a bank like yours?
I would say it's never too early.
Never too early.
When you have the idea, when you know what to do, call us and come to us and we will help you. We work together with a few great facilitators. These are companies which help startup companies to structure themselves, and we do events with them together. We help them to find funding. We help them to have the right structure in place, because the structure emerges as the company grows, and it's very important to not making any big mistake in the beginning, because sometimes the whole story is pretty much path dependent. It means when you make a mistake in the beginning, it's very tough to correct it at a later stage.
One last question to wrap it up, because I realized that a lot of my audience are students because of my network. Maybe you can say, what is the main difference that you see between startups culture versus corporate culture?
It's a whole different world.
Yes.
But I see the key difference would be probably that an entrepreneur is essentially a risk taker. He's taking a lot of risk, but he's also seeing a lot of upside. In the corporate culture, it's slightly different, because you're not supposed to be a risk taker. You're sometimes more of an internal politician. But at the end of the day, I would say, if you want to be successful in both worlds, you need some kind of entrepreneurial gene. Yeah. You need some kind of entrepreneurial flair, and that's where both worlds, I think, come together again.
Cool. I think that's a nice statement to end this show. Thank you very much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for tuning in, everybody, and I'll see you soon with a new episode of The Startup Show. Thank you very much and have a good day.